Hey everyone, it's Mo, and welcome back to One Mo Kidney. Today I'm going to talk about my experiences on dialysis and kind of a follow-up in the story timeline from my last video. So check that one out if you haven't seen it, I guess, about how I found out I was in kidney failure. But without further ado, let's get started.
Just listen to one patient describe a conversation that she had with a neighbor.
I have a lady next door to me now. She said to me, "Where do you go 3 days a week?" She knew the 3 days a week. I said, "Why? Are you writing a book, a mystery?" I said, "I go to dialysis." She said, "Oh, you're a drunk. I thought you said you didn't drink." I said, "If you don't get out of my face, you will need a doctor."
Wow!
I mean, facts, like, that's how I feel now, but, you know, when I first started, I was probably just as ignorant, but maybe a little less rude. But for those of you who don't know, dialysis is the process of filtering toxins from your blood that your kidney would otherwise do if it were working. So in my case, at that point, my kidneys were pretty much totally shut down. So I immediately started on hemodialysis. So my first dialysis in the hospital was actually a pretty rough experience looking back on it. And I still remember probably my first like super low point was right after I completed that session. I was getting wheeled back in the bed from the dialysis unit to my room in the hospital. And then my mom came up to me and said, you know, my aunt Khati Isma is on the phone. I was just holding the phone to my ear. And at that point, like I tried to say something, but I just couldn't. So I remember I just like put the phone down in my lap and I just started sobbing, and I felt like, you know, the biggest baby, just like passing all these doctors and other patients in the hospital, and it was just me, you know, in the bed with my mom and my sister walking next to me, the patient transport person behind me, and just me crying. I've come a long way since then, but at that point I think I was crying most out of, you know, fear of like, is this my life now? Like, I didn't expect it to be so hard, but you know, it slowly got better. So now I'm going to transition over to, after leaving the hospital, I began doing in-center dialysis. Doing dialysis at the clinic was another kind of crazy experience, but I'm really glad to have gone through it in the end. What ended up being my schedule at the clinic was I'd do Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday mornings. I'd wake up, I think, around 4:30 a.m. That way I can be ready to leave by 5:15 a.m. and get there by 6. And then depending on when I'd hook up, I'd end up leaving between 11 and noon every day. And the initial goal was to do that so that I could get, time to do other things, and I wouldn't be impeding on some of my other activities that I was hoping to continue at the time. But it ended up being so physically and mentally draining that plan just, kind of blew up in my face. And that went on for about 3 months until finally my doctors and I decided, it might be better for me to go on peritoneal dialysis, which is something I could do at home. First, something I almost forgot to mention about the center dialysis. One thing that made it a little easier for me was, since I went so early, there wasn't really much of anything on TV except for Martin. And for those of you who don't know it, the Martin Show is now, one of my favorite shows ever. But I've never seen it before. But since it would be the only thing on at like 6 o'clock in the morning, I think it was on BET, I would just watch that for hours. And I remember, because the way it's set up, I have drains running like over my chest and across my arm to the machine. And if I move my chest a lot, it would stop and it would start beeping. But there were points I'd be laughing so much, like I couldn't control it, and it would beep, and I'd feel so bad because the nurses would have to come back over and fix it for me. But anyway, here's like a clip in case you don't know what Martin is, just something.
All right. Wait a minute. The nose. Wait a minute.
What?
Somebody living foul. Somebody living. What? Get over there. Get over there.
What?
Tommy takes one of them. Them my mama biscuit. Them my mama biscuit. Yes, Gina. No, y'all my mama biscuit. That's right, you cheated. Y'all ain't do nothing but snap them raggedy ass peas.
So my schedule on peritoneal dialysis was actually pretty crazy. It started out okay, but they found out quickly that I wasn't getting enough done. So I ended up having to do longer times at home, which meant almost practically my whole day was spent connected to the machine, and the rest of the time I was going to school. So I would like hook up to my machine by 9 p.m. Then I'd stay on it overnight, wake up around, usually I'd say 7 to 9, depending on when I'd hook up the night before. And then I'd do another 4 to 6 hours immediately after, draining and unhooking and then rehooking the lines. And after that, I'd have lunch or maybe talk to my family for 30 minutes, and I'd have to drive 30-40 minutes up to UC, down to UC, for classes, and I'd stay at classes for a few hours, and then I'd drive home and repeat the cycle every day. I could probably go into a lot more minutia about everything else I was feeling and dealing with while on dialysis, but then this video might be like 2 hours long. So I think I'm going to end it here with some advice for anyone who may be dealing with dialysis, or maybe some other similar struggles you may be going through in any aspect of life. And it's when you're handed kind of cards just out of the blue, and it's just something you have to deal with. A big thing that I struggled with at the time was I was being told by a lot of people kind of certain expectations I should be feeling as I'm going through the process. And like when I didn't match up with those feelings, a lot of the times I'd be like disappointed in myself, and I'd like put that on myself, like I'm not to the certain level I'd expect. And that can be harmful, I feel, in a lot of regards to your mental well-being, especially when you're going through something so hard. It's important to, do what you feel is best for yourself and kind of try and take care of yourself in that way. No one can really tell you how you're supposed to be feeling. And for me, I didn't even know how I was supposed to be feeling. And that's okay in a lot of aspects of life. I found that, what was one of my favorite quotes? If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. So dialysis definitely put a wrench in my plans. But right now I'm focusing on taking this negative and turning it into something, great and better, not only for my life, but I'm hoping to help a lot of other people. Thank you for watching this. I doubt you made it this far, but if you did, I appreciate it. And I'll follow this one up with a little, what am I saying? I'll follow this one up with transplant. Peace.